Welcome to the Athletic FC podcast with me, Ayo Akinwolere. Real Madrid are back winning in the Champions League. Mbappe shone bright, but Vinicius was benched once again. So why are these two Galacticos on such different paths right now? All right, with us for this one, all the way from Madrid, we've got Guillermo Rai, and we've also got Colin Millar in the studio as well. Guy, let's start with you. Narrow 2-1 win for Madrid after Dani Carvajal was sent off. I mean, it's a bizarre second half personally, but, you know, not an easy night for them, but they got the job done in the end.
Yeah, it's true. It wasn't an easy night for Xabi Alonso. It was his debut at the Bernabeu for a Champions League night. And we all know the Dani Carvajal's temper. I don't know if you guys remember the scene with Musiala in the Euros.
Yeah.
We all know that he's a Spaniard, a real Spaniard. So
he's got a hot streak.
He loses his temper. Talking to his camp yesterday at night, he said that it was obvious that it was a red card, and they regretted the action. They know that it was a fail. But after he was sent off, I think Real managed the situation really well. I think Mbappe is at his best moment right now. I will say since he joined Real Madrid, I think he really helped the team. Now he takes all the penalties, which I think is also a good decision from Alonso, because he is now more confident. I feel that, and I think everyone feels that. They were capable of coming back as always and getting the first 3 points.
Yeah, let's talk about Mbappe, Colin. 50th goal for Real Madrid with that penalty. I don't know what you thought about the penalty itself. Maybe they were a bit lucky, but as Guillermo's sort of insinuating there, it feels like he's becoming a bit of a leader for Real Madrid right now.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, when Kylian Mbappe joined Real Madrid, and there was so much fanfare around that, and it felt like that was inevitable, that was always going to happen, there'd be such a build-up. And it's such a strange thing to say that he scored 44 goals in his debut season, and it felt like an underwhelming season. Now, obviously, that's because Real Madrid didn't win anything, and then maybe people were starting to think, is that linked to Mbappe's arrival? Has that offset the balance of the side a little bit? But obviously there were other issues for Madrid too, and I think Guillermo's right. I think Mbappe right now is now the player that Real Madrid thought they had signed initially in terms of reaching his top form. I think being the best striker in the world in terms of his all-round gameplay and what he can do. But he's also now the guy at Madrid, right? He's now starting as the number 9. Guillermo's mentioned it. He's now taking penalties. He's now taking responsibility. But also, Mbappe is now the one undisputed starter in this Real Madrid attacking unit, because even last night we saw Vinicius didn't start because Rodrigo started ahead of him on the left. Bellingham's been out injured, and Arda Güler's been playing in that number 10 role, and there's maybe a question mark of who's going to be in that position long term now, because they're just such fantastic talents. And also on the right hand side of attack as well, where Rodrigo had been before, you've now got Mastantuono playing there, you've got Brahim Diaz coming in there, and Xabi Alonso has rotated quite a bit, but what he has made clear is that Mbappe is the central striker. He is the guy who's going to be taking that responsibility, and as Guillermo said as well, you can see that has given Mbappe maybe not the confidence. I mean, I don't think that was ever an issue, but more the sense of he's the leader in this team, and he can take that responsibility. And if Real Madrid are going to be successful this season, Kylian Mbappe is going to be a massive, massive part of that. So I think that's one of the really interesting things of the early weeks of Xabi Alonso this season anyway, is just how quickly he has sort of gotten Mbappe's best version out of him, and just how much self-belief he has. And I think that takes a lot of his teammates on board with him too. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be positive about from Real Madrid. Obviously it's still quite early days, but that is certainly a big one to have that guy in his form.
I wonder whether the emergence of Mbappe is due to the sacrifice of Vinicius Jr. I mean, we'll talk about that more deeply later on, but I'm just fascinated from what you saw with Real Madrid. And it's probably the first time many people will have seen Real Madrid for the Champions League anyway. How different that was to Ancelotti when he had Real Madrid at the helm.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think quite a lot of people expected it to be these sort of really obvious mass changes when Alonso came in, and there'd be a real shift in the style of play. And I think that's true in a way, but it's not quite as obvious on the eye. So, for instance, the formation, I think Xabi Alonso kind of likes his 4-2-3-1 formation, or maybe sometimes it's 4-3-3, and that's very similar to the Ancelotti and how he lined up. I think the difference is that it's not a revolution of what's going on; it's more of an evolution in terms of what the players that he's brought in, the style of play he wants to implement a bit different. I think you can see that he is a more systems-driven coach, and by that I mean I think he's got a clearer idea of what he wants his players to be doing in terms of being in a compact unit, moving across the pitch as one. And obviously that the main kind of knock-on effect of that is on the forwards and their ability to be disciplined, to be able to track back and to be part of that team and to move backwards and forwards at that time. And that is quite a big demand of players like Mbappe and like Vinicius, because essentially they have been for years across different teams given essentially an attacking freedom to be like, you're the best players in the world, just go out and show it. But now there is that little bit extra. And there has always been this question, I think, since Mbappe joined, is how do you fit all these guys in the one attack? Because we know Mbappe, Vinicius and Rodrigo too have a very similar attacking profile. So there had to be a little bit of compromise there, but I think that the balance that has been found at the moment seems to be working, albeit it kind of feels like game to game there are those tweaks. But yeah, it's not overt, but I think Alonso has brought in a little bit more of that discipline into the style of play.
Yeah, Guy, another piece to the Madrid jigsaw is Mastantuono, the 18-year-old Argentinian. I mean, he started over Vinicius Jr. Yesterday in the Champions League. What have you made of his Real Madrid time so far?
Well, I think it's impressive the fact that the club has really bet on him from the start. Like, he trained just for 4 days and he played half an hour for the first game against Osasuna. So it was pretty clear for both fans and I think Alonso that it was the club's bet. It was the most expensive signing this summer, up to 63 million euros, so almost $70 million. I think he's only 18 years old, but when you see him and you watch a performance like he did yesterday, you feel that he's a different character, a different player. I think is different to Arda Güler, even that they have like similarities as midfielders, creative midfielders, offensive midfielders, but he can play from the right wing, which is great for Real because they were really looking for a player who can start from the right. And yesterday, I think it wasn't his best performance, or I'm sure that he will get better with the time and with more games and more performances. But it was obvious that he created I think that Olympique Marseille felt unbalanced when he touched the ball. There were 2 or 3 actions in which you could really feel that he could do whatever he wanted, and he almost scored in the first half. I think he was very vertical, which is also great for a midfielder at Real, because when you have the ball, you really need to be electric. You really need to be quick. There are indeed some Real Madrid fans who compare Franco Mastantuono to Ángel Di Maria. Ángel Di Maria, I think it was a different player. He was more, I think he was more offensive. He was more a winger than a offensive midfielder. But they are both Argentinians. They have magic in their feet, and it's obvious that the comparisons will be rising once we see Mastantuono playing for Real. It's obvious.
Yeah, have you seen the magic in Mastantuono's feet, Colin?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, obviously the adaptation process from South American football into European football isn't always the easiest, but he has it does seem like a relatively smooth transition. And one of the things I would pick up on with Guillermo's point is that this was a Xabi Alonso signing in the sense that Real Madrid for years and years they've made club signings, right? So something like Trent Alexander-Arnold was somebody who they had tracked for 12, 18 months. They knew his contractual situation, and he was a club signing. And I think there's more than just they're a very good player, obviously, but there's more to it than that in terms of all the outside interest of Madrid too. But I think when you look at this summer, you look at Mastantuono, you look at Dean Huijsen, you look at Carreras. I think those are very coach-driven appointments, and I think that's very interesting in that Real Madrid haven't really been a club who have had that kind of had a coach's ideology kind of implemented on them like this. And I think that's what makes this Xabi Alonso era so interesting, is that there has been a compromise in that sense. And Xabi Alonso is a guy who I think Madrid have gone full in on in terms of what his ideas are, what he's bringing to the club. And it is interesting as well how that sort of balance in that attack, because we all know Vinicius, Mbappe, Jude Bellingham, these are all guys who love to just go forward and to try to get goals, and they maybe aren't quite as tactically disciplined as somebody who would be on that right side. And obviously Rodrigo's been played there quite a lot in the past. Brahim Diaz can play there. Even Valverde could move into that position with the energy he brings. So I think it is interesting that from a tactical point of view, he's obviously somebody who is already very, very important to this team.
Okay. Guy, I just want to talk about Trent Alexander-Arnold. So much has been made about the departing from Liverpool to Real Madrid and how Real Madrid went around that business. But it didn't last that long in yesterday's match, and it looks like it could be a little lengthy spell for him on the sidelines.
Yeah, I think we will have to wait for at least 5-6 weeks to see him back to the squad, to the team. Let's see if he ends up playing for Real when they play at Anfield, which will be great, a great story for us. But it's obvious that now he will be sidelined for some weeks. It's pretty serious if we talk about muscular injuries. And it was, I think, something that it wasn't part of the plan. Obviously, it was, I think, in the third minute. So obviously, it's not related to, I will say, like the workload, because he didn't play for England. He was rested. He had the chance to train with the rest of his teammates for the last 2 weeks, like normally. And yeah, I think it's an important blow for Xabi Alonso, because obviously Dani Carvajal has come back. He's again, I will say, at his best, even though he has suffered 1 season ago the ACL, the anterior cruciate ligament injury. But he was playing really nice. It was good news, but he really needs to rest. It was important to rotate, and I think we will have to see if Dani Carvajal is able to play like 5-6 games in a row. If we take into account that it will be every 3 days, it's a bit risky for a player who has just come back from an important injury, right? But now that Colin was talking about Xabi Alonso's decisions and involvement in the latest signings, it's interesting because I do feel that with Trent Alexander-Arnold, it wasn't the case, obviously, because as we reported here at The Athletic, the signing or the deal was almost agreed before Xabi Alonso agreed to join Real Madrid. With Carreras or Mastantuono or Hausen, Alonso did have an involvement because he called them before they signed for Real. Alonso was able to explain them the project, but with Alexander-Arnold, it wasn't the case. It's a club's bet. It was seen as a really good opportunity in the transfer market because he's a top star player. But we will have to wait for at least to check if he's able to recover. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about Mbappe versus Vinicius Jr. because this time last year we were talking about Vinicius being a nominee and the favourite to win the Ballon d'Or. This was also the year he scored the win in the Champions League final when Madrid beat Dortmund. Meanwhile, Mbappe had just arrived at Madrid and was trying to bed himself in. Colin, what have you made of who the star is right now at Real Madrid?
Yeah, no, it certainly is, isn't it? And I think when we talk about even Vinicius Jr., and he has been out of form in this calendar year, there's no doubt about it, he still does have a goal return and he still has an ability to provide match-winning moments and assists and things like that. I think the major issue, and this isn't anything new, but the major issue is a stylistic one in that Mbappe, Vinicius, and we've spoken about Rodrigo as well, are very similar players in terms of the positions of the pitch they like to operate. And Mbappe, whenever he was playing before with PSG, and he had been playing as that sort of central striker when they still had Neymar and Lionel Messi, and he said, actually, I much prefer playing for France because I can work off Olivier Giroud as a sort of target man, as a number 9, and that allows me to come in from the left, and that he just said that gets the best out of what I can do. This is what I enjoy doing the most. But now he is being deployed as he is a number 9 striker, and he does seem to be thriving it. So in that to me is really interesting. But it is a case of they needed to overcome that issue, and I think it's also very tempting for us to overstate how big an issue it is, because Madrid scored a lot of goals last season. That wasn't really the issue. The issue was Madrid couldn't control games in the way that they would have done in the past. Obviously, you had Toni Kroos retiring, you had Luka Modric going into the sort of final spell of his career at the club, and they haven't really been able to replace that profile of midfielder. And I think that then creates a disconnect with those forward players. So whilst we can say, yes, of course, they operate in the same positions, and that's an issue in itself for Alonso, I think the problems ran a little bit deeper. So I think fixing the midfield issues, in which the profile of players, obviously we've just talked about some of the new signings in terms of ball progression and things like that, and tactical discipline, I think that has improved, and that should be able to mean that players like Vinicius and Mbappe can play in the same team in a more coherent manner. And I think we will see that this season. But again, there's just so much attacking talent in this team, isn't there, that if somebody like Vinicius didn't start against Marseille, that's not to say he's not going to be starting in the weeks going ahead, but there's just so many options available that maybe Alonso thinks that this is the perfect game to sort of maybe rotate and just to see if something else is a little bit more effective against this sort of opposition who play a really high line, who are very aggressive, and that's not necessarily what they will get in La Liga. So yeah, it is a case of Vinicius need to refine his form. Obviously, there's a sort of ongoing contractual situation as well with him.
It's not up 2027, I think it's not back up or something like that.
Yeah, and this has been, it almost feels like Madrid have, and Guillermo would be able to explain this much better than me, but Madrid have almost been briefing him, look, we will sort this, but we're just not going to do it now. And also almost by saying that kind of feeds into kind of narrative that what is going on? Why can't this just be sorted out? Why can't we put this rumour to bed? I mean, like, obviously Vinicius is an incredible player, even when he's not in form, as we've said. So it's going to be really interesting to see going forward. But I don't think necessarily you can't have these players in the same team. It's all about finding the tactical balance and getting the right players in behind. And I think they have taken quite a big step, certainly in the past few months over summer.
Yeah, Guillermo, what's going on with the contract? Because it feels like it was a summer where we were talking about whether or not Rodrigo was going to carry on at Real Madrid. Now we're saying perhaps Vinicius Jr. might not have a future at Real Madrid. Who knows?
His contract runs out in 2027, so it's not so far. So I think that taking into account how Real Madrid executives operate, the normal thing will be to see the player renewed before the next transfer window, summer transfer window. So I will say before June 2026, before the World Cup in the States, we should see, in a normal situation, Vinicius renewing his contract with Real. But the thing is that, as far as we know, as far as Mario Cortegana, who has followed closely the case, reported, the thing is that it's now stuck. Like the negotiations haven't developed it. There have been for months reports in Spain, probably coming from the club itself, saying that he was close to renew, but we didn't get at the Athletic the confirmation that it was going to happen and that it was going to happen soon or it was really close. So I think that is obviously part of this story. Like, okay, now Vinicius has changed completely, I will say, his role. I will say that this is a revolution, because he was almost... he was the favorite to win, to leave the Ballon d'Or last season, and now he's not. I wouldn't say that he's a substitute or considered as a substitute, but he's not a real starter anymore. He has been on the bench in two of the last 5 games, so we could consider that Alonso have doubts regarding his figure, and obviously it's part of the situation with the club. Is all related. I think that if you are the club's bet, and we have witnessed that with Mastantuono, if they really bet on you, you play from the start. You even that you are an 18-year-old kid, you really feel the confidence, and I think it will be really interesting. Apart from obviously watching closely what is going on with the negotiation and with the talks. What's Vinicius' response? But because as of now, what we have seen and what we know is that when he didn't play from the start against Oviedo, his camp was really annoyed, and they didn't know that it was going to happen. So it was unplanned. It was something that take them by surprise. It's obvious he's a top player. He wants to play every game, but let's see how he responds to Alonso's decisions, because I know for certain that he will try to do his best, but maybe the relationship gets frozen or is now frozen. Who knows? I don't have this insight, but I'm sure that it will be there will be some tension. It's another leader of the team, probably now, as you were and Colin were saying. Mbappe has emerged as the big leader because of his goals, because of his latest performances, because of his adaptation. But Vinicius was considered another leader and part of the I will say of the good atmosphere that Real Madrid have during the Ancelotti's stage was partly because of Vinicius and because of Vinicius' performances. So it's good to follow a good line to follow, obviously.
We've had a question in actually from one of the viewers on YouTube, and thanks for your questions, by the way, and keep sending them in. This one says, given the initial decision in the midst of the major rebuild Real Madrid are currently undergoing, what do you think the 5-year plan is in terms of transfer targets, change of style of play, or future goals? Which names stand out for the new project the most? And also, how could Madrid's starting 11 look like in 2 or 3 years? Definitely keep those questions coming in. Great question. I'll go to you, Colin, first from what you've seen, and then Guillermo from any insight you have. What do you reckon in the next 2 or 3 years? What might that starting 11 look like?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, isn't it? And as we touched on earlier, this is now being driven a lot more by a coach's demands essentially for what he wants, and it's less driven kind of by the big name status that players might have. So Real Madrid's transfer strategy in the past number of years has been very clear. It's been to target players going into the last 12-18 months of the contract, and then to say, like, can we get a deal done, which either means that we can sign them as a free transfer or that we can then pay a rather sort of minimal transfer fee slightly ahead of time. And that strategy hasn't always worked. It didn't work with Vini Jr last year when they tried to sign him from Lille, obviously into the final 12 months of his deal. But a lot of their deals have been done like that. Obviously Trent Alexander-Arnold was done like that, Antonio Rudiger, Colin Mbappe and many others. I don't think that's going to be the strategy anymore. I think they're going to be looking at players who can be part of this system that Alonso wants. And if you look at the squad that they have right now, I mean, we've spoken about the sort of embarrassment of riches in the attacking areas. There are other areas in that squad that do need addressing. Probably midfield is the obvious one. Not so much in if you look at Tchouaméni, Valverde, Camavinga, like these are all
quality players.
These are all top level players. But who's going to step into the role of what a Toni Kroos was to this team, what a Luka Modric was to this team? Players who can control games, control the tempo of the games, not just the possession, and also be the player that kind of dictates to everyone else, be a leader in that midfield. I think individually they're all very good profiles, but they don't quite fit together. I think there needs to be a little bit more cohesion there. I don't know who that player is going to be, but I mean, who can be their Pedri as for Barcelona? In fact, if you look at all of Barcelona's midfielders, that's what they're targeted on, is being able to do that with the matches. Real Madrid don't quite have that yet, so I think that's one area. Obviously the right back situation as well, and it sounds silly saying that, having just signed Trent Alexander-Arnold, and maybe Trent Alexander-Arnold was maybe a player who they saw as being able to maybe not be a midfielder but to move into those midfield positions. Obviously we know the technical ability that he has, but the right back situation with Dani Carvajal's age, with the fact that Trent Alexander-Arnold maybe is at a stage of his career where he might be liable to picking up more muscular injuries, as we've seen. That might be a leap, but they do need more cover there. It is difficult to say though, isn't it, in terms of getting that balance? It's going to be Xabi Alonso's decision. It's going to be coach-driven decisions, and I think it'll probably be a profile of player who isn't maybe quite as high status or might not quite bring that baggage that some others might have in the past. But again, that's going to be an institutional question for Madrid, and whether they can evolve alongside their coach.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, what that team might look like in 2 or 3 years, Guillermo, but also who might be the players they might be looking at. I was talking to some Arsenal fans today about William Saliba, because, you know, if it goes to plan as how Madrid's tried to contact players, he's the kind of player that sits quite well in that last few years or last year of his contract that they might be able to go for.
I think it's easy for us to say that there will be more reinforcements in the defense in the next few seasons, and obviously William Saliba is I think we reported that he was one of Real Madrid targets because he's one of the best in the market right now, and because it's not official that he has renewed for Arsenal. So I think that even that we say that Xabi Alonso, and we have mentioned this before, that Alonso has an important voice inside the Real Madrid recruitment. It is also true that he was thinking in the long term. He wasn't thinking in his first season. So I think that some of the players who have arrived this season will be really important in the next 2 or 3 seasons, and also because there are many youngsters like Eduardo Camavinga who is still developing, even Aurelien Tchouameni. I'm sure that most of them will be important in the next 2-3 years, also because they are great investments from the club, and they really need to play them.
All right, let's move on, because next we'll talk about refereeing conspiracies and a surprise music career for a Madrid icon. Yeah, look, another big story surrounding Madrid involves refereeing. Last week, the club said they are preparing to submit a report to FIFA to detail what is happening in Spanish football with regard to refereeing, Colin. I mean, come on, man. This is not the first time Real Madrid have had issues with referees. Can you bring us up to speed with what's going on here?
Yeah, so, as you say, Ayo, this is a very Spanish football thing for clubs to make official complaints about refereeing. I do think one of the issues for this is this happened after Saturday's game at Real Sociedad when Dean Huijsen was sent off, and the decision was upheld by the VAR. And Madrid complained about it after the game. They thought it was an unfair dismissal. Maybe they did have a point, but again, this sort of all goes back to last season as well, when there was a number of issues, and Real Madrid voiced their displeasure to the Spanish Football Federation, to La Liga, to the people that essentially oversee the officiating body, and they were requesting for VAR audio files to be released and things like that. And this all sort of came to a head last season, actually ahead of the Copa del Rey final against Barcelona, whenever the match referee has pre-match press conference, which again is maybe a little bit unusual for non-Spanish football fans, but he had his press conference and he essentially broke down in tears by saying how his family had sort of been subjected to this abuse, essentially, and he blamed it on what had come out of Real Madrid TV, essentially, and saying that, of him being essentially a dishonest figure in his officiating. And of course, in that final itself, Antonio Rudiger got a sort of retrospective suspension for throwing like a bottle or a thing of ice at the referee in extra time. So yeah, these things do have an impact, and it's something that is a Spanish football issue. It's a Real Madrid issue, and I think one of the main things that we need to address in this as well is that a lot of this is sort of a political thing, right? And that Real Madrid want to be seen to have for La Liga and for the federation and for the people who are presidents of those associations, there's always different power battles at play. And even Real Madrid saying that they're going to submit it to FIFA. And obviously Real Madrid spent the summer at an institutional level praising FIFA for their Club World Cup and how fantastic an idea this all was. So none of this is really coincidental, but what it does do, of course, is that it feeds into a fan base, and it tells a fan base almost what they want to hear, whereas maybe fans of other clubs would be like, well, this just sort of makes you look a little bit ridiculous. But in the Spanish football context, I think every club is a little bit like this. This isn't unique in clubs sort of making these complaints about officials. So yeah, I think that all has to be taken into context. But I think another thing about this is this goes right back to VAR and what VAR does, and it sort of, I think it promotes this kind of idea that there is almost like this conspiratorial thing against your club, and maybe there's like an unseen thing of what's going on, which I don't buy into at all, but I can sort of see why fans might. And I think Real Madrid have just sort of released this to be like, look, this is what we think, and we're trying to, obviously, and all clubs do this at some level, is to apply some sort of subliminal pressure to officials going into their future games to be like, look, we've been wronged, so maybe, just bear that in mind when you're refereeing us again, sort of thing.
Wow. So much drama. Yeah. Guillermo, look, Spanish FA says that Real Madrid's appeal to rescind Dean Huijsen's red card in the 2-1 win over Sociedad on the weekend has been rejected, and that he will serve a 1-match suspension. All right. I'm hesitant to ask this from someone who covers Real Madrid, but is there a conspiracy against Real Madrid and referee decisions?
I mean, I think that talking from the Madridista side, I will say that there is this thinking or this belief that it could be a conspiracy, but based on the facts, and the fact maybe is the Negreira's case, which is still a process that is going on. We will have to see the consequences of this judiciary case, and I think is the argument that all Madridistas have in mind when they complain about the referees is also true, as Colin has said, that there have been changes within the referees committee, and they are supposed to be an independent body to the FA. So there are always politics, and there will always be. So it's also true. But I think that the Negreira's case have created this atmosphere from 2-3 years ago. It was when we studied the coverage in Spain for the Athletic, and it was like a point of inflection for everyone.
All right, we have to end on this, gents, because a few weeks ago, I don't know if you saw it, but Sergio Ramos, former Madrid legend, released a music video about his love for the club, but also how the story with the club ended. He sings the lyrics, "It's a good thing I left because you didn't treat me the same. You loved me and I loved you, but someone always gives more. Everything was what I dreamed it would be until it was time to wake up." All right, let's check that on Sergio Ramos' YouTube channel, by the way. But Guillermo, talk to me about that one. There's a little hint of Bad Bunny in that.
Yeah, it's a good shout, because I think the rhythm and some of the covers are from Bad Bunny's team. So we will say you I think that you have knowledge.
I'm trying to give him some kudos.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? Is that too much? I mean, why is he coming out with this? It was a few years ago. I mean, he's a Madrid legend, but enjoy your time in Mexico, brother. You're having a good career.
I think he has said this publicly in a Spanish show, but Ramos is planning to start his career as I will say a music star. Let's see how this ends. I'm sure that his football career, his career as a player, is difficult to match. And I think he should have kept that way, like But but the thing is that he obviously have the capital and the links to many artists. We at the Athletic talked to a flamenco group, which is important here in Spain, and he has been always related to flamenco singers. He indeed has knowledge about the industry and about flamenco and urban music, and obviously he doesn't have the best voice, and I think I'm not only speaking from myself, but talking to different music experts. They say the same, but now we have auto-tune,
exactly.
So I guess everyone can be a music star. And yeah, I'm sure that Florentino he's not really happy with this, obviously, because obviously he's talking about his exit, and it was a difficult moment at Real Madrid. But in the end, I think it was I will say a good moment for Florentino, because I think he showed that the club is above every player, and in the following renewal negotiations right now with Vinicius, we were talking about Vinicius renewal. I think that with Ramos they set an example, a good example for the club, because they said, hey, we have these terms, we keep these terms, and you have to accept them because we are Real Madrid. And mostly, I think Ramos is trying to explain from his side what was going on at that time. I love you guys. I wanted to be with you for longer, but you didn't take me into account. And yeah, I'm sure that he has been luckier in other romantic situations. Talking about Ramos, but Yeah,
I actually don't mind. It's quite a catchy tune, but let's leave it there, Jed. So I really appreciate you joining us. Guillermo, thank you. Colin also. And also thank you guys for watching. We'll catch you soon. For more from the Athletic FC podcast, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. We've got top journalists like David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anker, and plenty more through the entire season. Make sure you don't miss an episode of the Athletic FC. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts from.